Have you ever felt really good that first half of the game, and then second half you start to crash, you start to die out, that by the time you get to the end of the game, you are not able to perform the way that you think you should? Let's be clear. This isn't simply a pregame meal problem. This usually starts the night before and stacks from there. So today we're going to be walking through three layers of game day nutrition: the night before, the day of, and what you do during the game. I'm going to share with you guys some of the things that I talk to with teams like Sumner and Arlington High Schools up here in Washington, as well as with my athletes, guys like Kaysen, Carter, and Molly. And this really allows them to take their game to the next level. And so this episode is for any athlete who wants to come in clutch late in games, not gassed out when it matters most. So, night before the game, don't show up on game day with an empty tank. Show up with what you fueled with today, this morning, yesterday, and the day before even. So your glycogen, your muscles gas tank, it's not just built on game day. It's built the night before, the day before, or multiple days before. And so if you're not eating a solid dinner, if you're not eating solid meals the day before and the days before games, you are not preparing your tank to perform at the highest level. And I need to remind you guys, this isn't just about protein. This isn't just about getting a steak in or getting salmon or getting whatever sort of chicken, whatever. It's about getting carbs. Carbs are the things that are going to fill that tank. So you want the pasta, the rices, potatoes, fruit, but you want a full meal. I know some talk about carb loading. Carb loading may be useful depending on your sport. If you're a soccer player, basketball player, somebody who's going to be on both sides of the ball, like in football, then yeah, you might need to carb load a bit the night before the game. But your carb loading is going to be based on your role in the game and how many games you're going to be playing. So, a lot of athletes often underdo dinner, or they overemphasize the protein, or maybe if their families are like, well, you got to have a salad. It's like, yes, you may need this. The salad might help. The protein you definitely need, but you really need those carbs. You really need to fill that gas tank up. And so make sure that you are doing that. Make sure you're checking that box, and make sure it's not just dinner. Make sure it's the meals the rest of the day. Maybe even consider a post dinner snack depending on how much time you have after dinner. But again, if the night before is light, your energy by the second half will be too. So you can't just throw a banana or peanut butter jelly or whatever 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes before a game and expect to perform at a high level in the fourth quarter. My athletes are able to sustain through full games, not simply because they had a good pregame meal, but because they are putting in the right stuff the night before the game, the day of game day, including breakfast, and during games. Carter McConis is one of the chief examples of this. This kid is pushing his way into being a 2026 draft prospect. He is only 5'9", but he takes every single opportunity he can to get better, to ensure he gets himself in the best position possible to play at the next level. Even though he's already committed to ASU. He's already been committed to ASU for a couple years now, but he is working his butt off to get himself to the best possible version of him to play at the college level and to play beyond that. And that includes with his nutrition. He is crazy disciplined, and he makes sure that he's getting a solid meal in with carbs the night before games. He makes sure that he's getting meals in and snacks in regularly throughout the day. And then he makes sure that he gets his lighter pregame meal, because he likes lighter pregame meals, plus snacks and electrolytes during and right before games. So again, he checks all the boxes that we're going through today, but I want to emphasize that he gets in a good, solid, balanced meal the night before. And a lot of times he's preparing it himself. It's not just his parents making it for him. There's a lot of times where he is doing it for himself. All right, now let's talk about game day. What you eat all day, especially breakfast and lunch, is what's going to set you up for your best performance. Stop skipping breakfast or just relying on cereal, waffles, little instant oatmeal packets. Like, stop relying on those if you think you want to perform at a high level, because you won't. You will not perform at your best. You will not perform at the best possible version of yourself if you are relying on cereal, waffles, or protein shakes, or you're just skipping breakfast altogether. Another mistake y'all need to stop doing is going several hours between meals. particularly on game days, especially if you are having multiple games in a day. You should be eating every 3 hours, sometimes maybe even every 2 hours to make sure that you're getting enough fuel in your gas tank. And then number three is stop overemphasizing protein heavy meals and forgetting the carbs. Protein does not give you usable energy. Carbs give you that usable energy that you are going to be using. Protein, yes, helps you preserve and build muscle mass, but you need to have gas in that tank in order to be able to use those muscles. So let's make sure that you are fueling well and fueling consistently. Breakfast is not just oh yeah, it would be nice if you did it, a performance requirement. When I work with teams, Arlington High School being one of them, we prepared them for that season. We lock them in and be like, okay, this is what you got to do on game day. Here are some breakfast ideas. A lot of them did breakfast burritos. Here are some snack ideas. Here are some lunches to make sure that you have a good, solid, consistent lunch. Here are some pregame meals that you can have after school so that when you come in Friday night at 7 p.m., you're ready to go. And then, hey, here are some things that you can have at halftime, quick energy options, which we'll talk about here in a sec, to make sure that they continue to play at that high level. We looked at the whole day, not just right before the game. A lot of families, a lot of coaches, they're like, what should we eat pregame meal? It's like, yeah, that's important. We should figure that out, but we also need to address the rest of the meals. We've got to address the whole picture. And so what was cool though is later in the season I got to watch Arlington play. They got to play their rival Lake Stevens, and their running back Caleb Reed was a prime example of a guy who fueled well and carried that ball probably 30 plus times in that game to help them win against the former state champs, against their huge rival who had just won back-to-back state championships. Not only that, he did exactly what my next point is, which is fueling during the game. So yes, he took care of pregame. Yes, he took care of the night before the game. But at the level that he was playing at, I don't know, he probably ran like 200 plus yards. I don't know exactly how much he ran, but he ran, and his body was tired. And so at halftime, we made sure we had Scratch Labs electrolytes with sugar in it for energy at halftime. On top of that, he was running the ball over and over and over again in the fourth quarter to try to burn some of the timeout when they had the lead. And he was tired. He had to come out for like a play or two. He came out for a play or two, grabbed, more of those Scratch Labs, more of those electrolytes with the sugars, got some quick energy in him, and then he went right back out there and finished out that game. And so this is what it means to become clutch. If you want to come in clutch, you got to fuel like it's your job. You got to be consistent. You got to treat nutrition like the game changer that it is. Now, let's talk about the pregame stuff. Or sorry, mid-game stuff, mid-game fuel. So if you are not coming off the field very much, if you have to play multiple games in a day, you have to plan to fuel mid-game and in between games. Athletes who play both sides of the ball, like wide receiver, DB, running back, linebacker. Maybe you're a basketball player who's in the game most of the game. Maybe you are a soccer, lacrosse player that has to cover the whole ground of the field multiple times in a game. Maybe you are a baseball, softball, volleyball, whatever player that has to play in hot or humid conditions and has to play multiple games a day. If you're any of these athletes, you cannot just rely on pregame meals. You can't perform at your highest level for 2 or more hours without refueling at some point. And so we've got to look at what are we doing pregame or what are we doing midgame? What are some quick, light, and easy things that feel good that also helps you stay energized? One of my athletes, Jason, he was really struggling with, that second half energy. He's a baseball player struggling with, energy at the second half of the game. And so we helped him build out ideas, routines, things like bars, little fruit snacks, like the little fruit leather type things, electrolytes, etc., to keep him going in the second half, to keep him energized. And it worked. He has way more energy going into late in the games because he made sure that he's checking that box. Sumner High School football team is another prime example of this. They just win and won state. Yeah, they just win and won one state. They won their 4A state championship here in the state of Washington this past year. And there's a lot of things that allowed them to do that. There's a lot of mental things. There's a lot of training things. They were lifting on game day, a lot of things that they were doing to take care of their bodies. But one thing that Coach Ross has instilled for many years is having half PB&J sandwiches at halftime. And so these are always ready to go. These are always things that are available to them so that they can stay energized, so that even if they're playing both sides of the ball, they're getting some solid fuel in at halftime. And then we added one more thing to them. So since I was helping out, it was bringing in Scratch Labs electrolytes for them as well. And so, at halftime, they had them going. We had plenty during the game. So if they needed some, later in the games, that they were set. And this allowed them to play at a high level for much longer. Again, if you are performing at a high level, if you're continuing to go, 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 you need to make sure that you're getting things like electrolytes, like with the sugars in them, the pure organic fruit bars, the apple sauces, the bananas, the oranges, all those different things that you need to be doing to help you stay playing at a high level. So make sure that you are checking those boxes. Make sure that you aren't just fueling pregame, but you're making sure you're having things ready to go so that you're not crashing mid game or in the fourth quarters. Now, some other things too. I really want to address this with you guys. This is really important. So some athletes are like, well, I don't want to feel all sick in the second half, or I only have this much time in between. It's like, okay, great. Fuel based on how much time you have. So if you're a soccer player, basketball player, etc., that only has maybe 15 minutes tops in between, then we're gonna need just the quick sugars. We're not gonna try to shove down a Cliff Bar or a sandwich or whatever. We're just gonna shove in some quick things. It could be the electrolytes. It could just be some electrolytes with some quick sugars in it. That's fine. Scratch Labs is my recommendation just because they're more scratch ingredients. They're better quality, but there's other options out there as well. And if you guys are curious about Scratch, like check the links down below. I'll drop a link there for that. But yeah, so my first step, the easiest, the lightest thing you can do is just make sure you're having sugar in your waters, electrolytes, sugar, etc. And so that's your first step. If you're like, I could probably handle a little bit more, then maybe you do oranges or gels or little fruit snack type things, the energy chews, things like that. You could get some of those to keep you going. Maybe it's the fruit leathers, maybe it's applesauce. But the more time you have and the less sensitive your stomach is, the more flexible you can be. That's why for Sumner High School, they've got a whole halftime to digest that sandwich. So if they eat that sandwich at halftime, even if half sandwich, it allows them enough time to settle a little bit before they go in second half. Not every athlete's going to do that, but most of them are going to, especially if they've been playing at a high level. This doesn't have to be a feast. It doesn't need to be this full-on meal. This just needs to get you that top off. This is just getting you enough gas to keep you going to top it off so that you can keep your engine going. You might be eating before the game, but are you fueling before the game? Are you treating what you put in your body like just another meal or just another snack? Or are you treating it like the fuel that it is for your muscles and for your performance? You really got to think about that. Are you being intentional about what you're putting in, or are you just kind of winging it? Because if you're winging it, then that's the level of performance you're going to get. You don't get your goals, you get your standards. That's a quote by Ed Milet. I'm not going to take credit for that. You don't always get your goals, you get your standards. So if your standards for your nutrition are lousy, then you're going to get lousy performance. If you want to be D1 level, if you want to be a D1 level athlete, you need D1 level habits, which means eating like it's your job, eating like it's going to level you up, because it will. Hydrating, sleeping, all the things that you've got to do if you expect to be a high performing athlete. So make sure that you're not skipping dinner. Make sure you're getting a good solid carb-based, protein-based meal the night before. Make sure that you're eating things that are not going to make you feel crappy on game day. Make sure that you're checking the breakfast box off as soon as possible. First thing in the morning, not waiting hours before you eat breakfast. Then eat every 2 to 3 hours after that. And then make sure that, especially if you are playing at a high level for an hour, 2 hours more, make sure that you're getting those quick carbs in. Make sure you're getting some stuff in to keep your energy going so that you are not crashing mid-game, so that you can come in clutch when it matters. Now, you only got 4 quarters. You only got 9 innings or 7 innings. You only got, less than an hour to play some of these games. Make sure that you've got enough gas for all of them. If you've got to play 3 games, make sure you got enough gas for 3 games. you've got to play both sides of the ball, make sure you have enough gas in your tank to play both sides of the ball. If you want to perform at the highest level possible, then you need to eat like you want to play it at the highest level possible. Now, if you want personalized nutrition plans for your sport, for your position, for your goals, DM me on Instagram, Nick Lemke RD. Links are in the caption. I've got game day fueling guides, or if you want more of a personalized nutrition plan, something that works for you, for your schedule, for your goals, then just shoot me a message. We can get you there. We can get you the results that you want, but you've got to take the first step by actually asking for it. And then just to give you guys final here, stop expecting to be a goat while putting in 10-year-old level effort into your nutrition. If you want to reach your full potential as an athlete, you got to take game day nutrition more seriously. And as always, keep striving for greatness.